Our dear, beautiful One Piece. Almost 30 years of publication, the greatest, most sold and read and loved manga in the whole world. A story that gave us so many laughs, so many tears, and dreams, and wonder, and joy, and all of the beautiful feelings that we felt while traveling the Grand Line with Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates. But you should never forget where you started from, right? So early One Piece, is it still as relevant today as it was 30 years ago?
Of course it is!
I've been recently reading One Piece again from the start, and I really do believe that early One Piece has so many themes that are very, very important and relevant, especially nowadays. Let's see why. One Piece opens with the execution of Goldie Roger and the beginning of the Great Era of Piracy, giving context to the story. And this serves as a foundation for the world that Oda is going to build arc after arc, and most importantly to present the main character to us. Who is Luffy? What are his values? Why does he want to become a pirate? And most importantly, what does being a pirate mean to him? If you think about it, right at the beginning of the story, Oda introduces one of the core themes of One Piece, which is the morality of pirates. He presents Roger, the king of the pirates, as the man who has obtained everything there is to wish in this world: wealth, fame, and power. And in a moment of his death, he pushes thousands, if not millions of people to become pirates like him and go look after the treasure that he left behind, which is for all of them to find, the legendary One Piece. And from this depiction only, it kind of looks like a bit of a egoistic, materialistic kind of life to live and dream to want to achieve, because we only know that he left an immense treasure, that he was a criminal, that he was executed for his crimes, and that he's pushing other people to be just like him. He contributes with his last words to create a new era of piracy and plunge the world into chaos. But then we see Luffy, our protagonist, a pure and innocent child who is trying to impress a group of adults that are the pirates of Shanks. At first, they could seem like the exact type of pirates that the premise in the beginning of One Piece described to us. They don't seem to have any pursuit rather than just being pirates for the sake of it. And they're mocking Luffy and they're making fun of him, but the closer we get to see them, the more things start to change. They actually start talking and expressing their values and what they believe in and why they are pirates. They say that being a pirate is all about having fun, traveling the vast world where the sea is boundless, with tons of islands to explore, and everything is in the name of freedom. And with this perspective, being a pirate doesn't really seem to be about wealth, fame, and power, but rather something much deeper than that. Luffy is listening to them at this point, and he is beyond excited. He admires them. You can see the admiration in his eyes, and that sounds like the life that he wants to live. And he wants to join them right away, but at that moment he is also warned about the dangers of being a pirate, because they tell him that being a pirate is no joke.
And remember this part because we're gonna come back to it.
The most important thing about how Oda is setting up the world of One Piece in the beginning is what Luffy learns from the argue between Shanks and the Mountain Bandits. Luffy gets heated, prideful, and he acts reckless. Shanks will lose his arm to protect Luffy, and this is something that will stay with Luffy and change his personality and help him develop a greater sense of responsibility. And that will teach Luffy to pick his fights. He learned to fight for the right cause, not for pride, but to protect those who need to be protected. Those moments is where not only Luffy's admiration towards Shanks gets to a greater level, but it's also the time where Luffy gets more determined than ever to become a pirate, because he promises Shanks that he's gonna return the hat once he has become a great pirate. And Luffy wants to honor that promise and live his life the way he wants to. That is how Luffy's desire to become a pirate is sealed in. Shanks gave up on two things on that day. He lost his arm to save a friend, and he gave away his hat to bet on Luffy's future. And with this whole part, with this whole introduction of Luffy and Shanks, we see a very different idea of what pirates are or what pirates can be in the world of One Piece, rather than the way they were presented initially to us. Pirates are not merely criminals who go about their way in the world putting people's lives in danger. They can be kind-hearted, righteous, with admirable morality, and they can be people who inspire us to be the best that we can and to follow our dreams. Shanks became Luffy's role model, and to Luffy, Shanks is exactly the type of pirates that he wants to be, because Shanks showed Luffy that being a pirate, yes, is about adventure, is about having fun, is about traveling the world, but it's so much more than that. It's about finding friends for life, about acting upon your core beliefs and your core morals, being loyal towards your friends, and being loyal towards yourself. Luffy having Shanks as his role model will fundamentally shape what type of pirate Luffy is and the great captain that he is now. Once Luffy is all grown up and he sets out to sea to start living his adventure and become a pirate, he has his first meeting with a boy whose dream is to become a marine.
Of course.
He meets Kobe, who is working on Alvida's pirate ship, despite his dream being the opposite of that. He's too scared to fight her, to rebel against her, and his dream is he's not really forgotten because he is pretty sure that he wants to become a marine, but he doesn't know how to act to do that. He doesn't have the courage to make a first step in that direction.
And then Luffy drags him for that.
From Luffy's interaction with Kobe, we understand something more about the type of personality that Luffy has. He loves people who are proactive in their way of wanting to chase their dreams, because Luffy loves people that live their life according to what they believe in. And Luffy understands that Kobe is not giving up on his dream, that he is just scared. He's not being mean to Kobe.
He's being a bit offensive.
But he's not being mean because Luffy sees something in Kobe. He sees that Kobe has this spark inside of him, and Luffy hates to see someone that is giving up on that. The way Luffy helps him is not with words. He's not giving like big speeches.
Oh, you need to believe in yourself.
It's actually the opposite of that, because Luffy expresses how much he dislikes that part of Kobe. But the second Kobe finally gets the courage to get back to Alvida and express himself and make that first tiny move towards being true to himself, being true to his dream, being true to his desires, then Luffy helps him right away. Luffy has the role of protector and liberator, but the thing about him is that he only helps people that are willing to help themselves. Luffy has no intention in lending a helping hand to someone who is not going to live their life even when that is saved by someone else. So after Kobe is saved, we get to finally meet Zoro with Helmeppo and Captain Morgan. And this part is where we really start to see how being a pirate or being a marine doesn't define your morals. We really start to doubt where good resides. Is it with marines or is it with pirates? Kobe is righteous and virtuous, and he dreams of becoming a marine in the name of justice. He wants to protect people. He wants to save people, and he believes in justice. And marines are the ones that are supposed to represent justice. We see so much corruption within them that as readers we start to question them, while pirates, who are wanted and seen as criminals, they can be both evil and good. They can be both great people or terrible people. So it's a very complex and realistic world where there's no such thing as black and white, but there's just infinite shades of gray. The flag that you carry doesn't necessarily reflect or indicate the type of morals that you have. It's a world that forces you to get to know a character before you decide they are good, they are bad. And the good thing about Kobe as a marine is that his morals are unshakable. He believes in justice and he wants to be a marine to pursue that core belief that he has. So no matter how much he's afraid, he will always do the right thing. And since escaping from Alvida, something inside of him has changed. We see that when Helmeppo has his gun up to his head, he's risking his life to do something that he feels is the right one to do. And this moment is so special to him and to us readers because it's the same exact way that he will act in Marineford. Like in Marineford, in this situation, Kobe is directly facing death, and he's doing it because he knows it's right. And that is the type of person that Kobe is. Just like Luffy is dedicating his whole life to freedom, to be a pirate, to become the pirate king, Kobe is doing the exact same, but with his idea of justice. Zoro is introduced, and his story is about a rivalry which remained unaccomplished. Kuina died unexpectedly and suddenly, and Zoro and Kuina promised to each other that one of them would become the world's greatest swordsman, and this becomes Zoro's ambition. Zoro is now fighting to fulfill his dream, and most of all, to fulfill his promise. And now, Zoro's character has a huge emphasis on physical strength. And he sees this physical strength as something that is necessary to get him as close as he can to his dream, to get him closer and closer to being the world's greatest swordsman. But despite having to rely completely on his own abilities, he shows absolute devotion to the people that he believes in and to the people that he chooses to follow. He is absolutely devoted to Luffy because he sees something in him that he has within himself, the determination to follow an absolutely crazy dream. He feels like they are the same. They both share a foolish ambition that is so huge, most people would not even dream of chasing, and that's what makes them stick together. And as I mentioned, when Zoro is introduced, we can't help but think about his relationship with Kuina, and especially the way Kuina felt about her dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman, because there's this whole idea that she expresses about how being a female will mess up with her ambition. She will not be able to be the strongest because women are weaker than men. And she expresses that even if she becomes the strongest, she will someday surely be surpassed because men are physically stronger. To which I think Zoro has a beautiful answer where he says,
"Why are you complaining to me? Like, you're the person I'm trying to be. You're the one that I'm trying to surpass. Why are you complaining to me about being weak?"
I think that the most interesting part about this discussion is right after Zoro, the next character that is introduced that will become a Straw Hat is Nami. And Nami is not a fighter. In a world full of enemies, of pirates who could easily outpower her, she always gets by in any situation because she outsmarts everyone with her incredible wits. And she is smart, she knows her way around the world, and she wins her challenges. She always comes out as a winner. I think with Kuina, Oda presented a problem for female characters living in the One Piece world, and with Nami, he's giving us the answer to that problem, which is strength has many faces. There's very different kinds of strength. Zoro showed us physical strength as a way to obtain what you desire, while Nami is showing ways you can obtain what you desire without physical strength. That it's not necessary to be physically strong, to be someone that can fight in the One Piece world, fight both physically their opponents and their enemies, and someone who can also metaphorically fight. I think this is a very interesting message for a shonen manga because in the shonen world, female characters are usually outnumbered by a lot and they rarely have a role that is as relevant as the male counterparts. So I think what Oda is doing with the whole Zoro, Queen and Nami situation here, the way he's introducing these characters, I think he's presenting a solution, or more than a solution, he's showing us an alternative. And we'll see this kind of alternative even later when Usopp will be introduced, because Usopp is also not a fighter, or at least he's not born a fighter. When Usopp joined the Straw Hats, he didn't have any training in fighting. His assets were his incredible aim, his ability to create stuff that he could use as weapons or as something to defend himself, and he used his abilities, his natural abilities, to create his entire fighting style around them.
But anyways, back to Nami and Zoro.
And here again, we see one of the core themes of One Piece, which is what it means to be a pirate. Now, Nami is very, very vocal about hating pirates. She despises them, she doesn't like them, she doesn't trust them, she doesn't want anything to do with them because she sees them as dishonest, untrustworthy, and just cruel. Nami basically sees pirates the same way that Marines picture them, and as much as Buggy is pretty much confirming what she thinks about them, Luffy is making her question herself. When Nami puts Luffy in danger to save herself, she is later faced with the consequences of her actions. When Buggy points the cannon at Luffy after caging him, now it's up to Nami to decide what she wants to do. So Nami has to choose whether she wants to save herself to get out of the situation or to save Luffy because it is the right thing to do. And when Luffy speaks to her, we can see that he brings up the lesson that he had learned from Shanks. You don't fool around with pirates. Nami doesn't have any respect for pirates and what pirates stand for. She doesn't understand what Luffy is talking about, but Luffy makes it as clear as day, and their exchange allows her to give an entire new weight to her actions and to her thoughts on pirates. Now, in this fight, Buggy gets exceptionally angry at Luffy because Luffy reminds him of Shanks, of course, not only because of the hat, but because of a way they're acting that is very resembling. And it's funny to see how Buggy explains the grudge that he has on Shanks with the devil fruit excuse and just blatantly omits everything that we know happened between them, which that is probably because Oda at that point didn't plan out what he wanted Buggy and Shanks' relationship to be like, but that's really funny to see because it somehow is very in character of Buggy, and in that matter it's very funny to see Luffy's reaction because we see the story from Buggy's point of view, but everything that Luffy gets out of it is,
oh, so Shanks saved your life? Oh, that's so nice of him.
But anyways, Luffy is triggered by it. He triggered these feelings of grudge and anger towards Shanks. Luffy's personality is very resembling of Shanks's because of the way Shanks influenced Luffy and his ideals on what being a pirate means, and also because Luffy is wearing the hat. This part is important because we get to see how Nami reacts to it. For the short time that she has known him, she has seen Luffy as someone very carefree, very lighthearted, very joyful person, and she is surprised to see him get that much angry over a hat. This is the moment where Nami starts to understand that Luffy is fighting for something. There is something about Luffy that is so much more than just, I'm a pirate, I want to be free, I want to go on adventures. Luffy believes in friendship, in promises, in keeping your word. Luffy is not the type of pirate that Nami is used to seeing. Another very, very significant moment for Nami and her changing her mind is the way Luffy acts with Shushu. As I said, she has seen his funny, strong and determined side, but this is the chance where she really gets to see Luffy's warm and careful nature. Luffy is very much like a brat. He can be very annoying to the point where he even picks a fight with Shushu, like right after he meets him. But whoever stands up for their values and their beliefs immediately gains Luffy's respect. Luffy is very empathic and he has an immediate and deep understanding on the nature of whoever is in front of him. He understands underlying feelings and unspoken words. Everyone that sees what Luffy did for Shushu is touched and moved and inspired by him. And he just needs to be himself to awaken people's sense of justice and freedom. His actions are where Luffy demonstrates to people how really his heart is feeling for them. Nami is moved by Luffy's actions, and to really prove how strength has many faces, she will be the decisive element in Luffy defeating Buggy. One of my favorite moments that proves really how immense Luffy's empathy and emotional intelligence is. Luffy knows nothing about Nami, but he understands that the anger and the resentment that Nami has for pirates has a root in something. She's not just being influenced by what the common people think of pirates and how the Marines portray pirates. There's a reason she feels that way, and he understands that she is hurting and that she has a reason to have certain beliefs that goes beyond the Marines' propaganda against pirates. And Nami is somehow starting to find some peace in her relationship with Luffy and Zoro. She is starting to see pirates as something different than what she's used to, and that is giving her a sense of relief. She's starting to have a taste of what freedom feels like. Moving away from Orange Town, we have this tiny arc which is very easily forgotten by everyone, but I want to talk about it. We need to talk about it, because what I love about this part is not only the fact that Luffy saves Gaimon, but it's the way that he does it, continuing the theme of Luffy being a liberator even from the start of One Piece. And what I really love about this whole East Blue part is how really Oda is diving deep into how much Luffy respects people having dreams and how he feels for them. Luffy never thought of Gaimon as a fool for believing there was a treasure for 20 years while there really was none. He didn't shame him or criticize him for believing in something that turned out to be false. The most touching part about it is really how Luffy is positive about Gaimon's failure. Luffy feels for him because Luffy is also after a legendary treasure that he doesn't know if it exists or not. He doesn't know what he's gonna find, but he's still after it. So Luffy really truly understands what Gaimon went through, and he feels like, well, he failed, I might fail as well, but if I don't pursue this dream, if I don't try, if I don't believe in it, then what am I gonna live for? That is a message that is very, very persistent in One Piece, is that you need to bet on your future.
We get to the Syrup Village arc,
where we meet Usopp. Usopp is another character that, as I mentioned, adds a lot to the theme of strength. I think he's extremely interesting as a character, and he's one of my favorite Straw Hats. When we meet him, he has a dream, but he doesn't believe in himself. He doesn't feel capable, he doesn't feel worthy. He dreams of living a life that is different than the one he's living, and so he lies. He lies to himself, he lies to his friends, he lies to the people in his village. He is presented as a coward, but we will soon find out that that is not true. Because when the Straw Hats approach the island and they're using Buggy's boat, so it has Buggy's Jolly Roger on it, he immediately shows up to face them and try to send them away. And we learn that he's a person that is scared and afraid, and he probably wants to run away, but he is ready to make all of the fantasies about his strength, about his fighting ability come true to protect the people that he loves. Usopp mentions that he is proud of being the son of a pirate, and Luffy admires his spirit. And he later confesses to Usopp that he actually knows his father and he speaks well of him, and Usopp is more motivated than ever to become the man that he dreams to become, a brave warrior of the sea. When everything about Kuro comes to the light, Usopp shows up to fight him, and this whole presentation of Usopp and the way that he acts despite being scared and despite naturally being a coward reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from Harry Potter, when Dumbledore says, "It is our choices that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities." And that's what Usopp is about. Usopp was not born brave and strong and fearless. He has to fight against his nature to become the person that he wants to become. He doesn't have the physical strength or the physical abilities that monsters like Luffy and Zoro have. He will work with everything that he has to become a fighter worthy of being remembered as a brave pirate. Syrup Village arc has some very, very amazing moments during the fights. My personal favorite one is when Luffy tells Kuro that Usopp is a much greater captain than he is, because unlike him, Usopp has character.
He's such a real one for this.
We really have this climax moment when Luffy hits him. We start to feel the way Luffy liberates people from being oppressed. The fight ends, this arc ends, and the Straw Hats gain the Going Merry, which is gifted to them as a way of thanking them for their good actions towards Kaya, Usopp, and the whole village, really. And so in this way, Usopp's life has touched the ones of so many others, and despite spending years trying to prove himself, trying to get people to see his worth, his value, and really see his existence. After all of these heroic actions, he doesn't want anyone to know about this. And for their peace, he just wants to pretend like nothing happened. Usopp is okay with being the only one that knows about his brave actions. And that's a very, very huge step forward for him.
Now it's time for Baratie arc.
When this arc starts, we once again see the theme of the negative and corrupted side of justice, with Full Body being pretty much a questionable marine. And as we are getting closer and closer to the point where the Straw Hats will enter the Grand Line, we start getting information on how scary and dangerous the Grand Line is. It's even called the graveyard of pirates. When we get to the Baratie, we learn that Zeph used to be a pirate that navigated the Grand Line, and we are just left wondering what happened to him. What has the Grand Line done to him to make him quit the life of a pirate? Another testimony of that is Don Krieg, the pirate that is coming back from the Grand Line, having his entire fleet of 50 ships defeated. Krieg, which is said to be one of the strongest pirates of the East Blue, is shown to be completely defeated and annihilated, and that's where we are introduced with the Shichibukai system. And the first one that we see is Mihawk. His presentation is impactful, to say the least. What I love about reading this part again now is that after so many years have passed, it doesn't feel like it's too much. It doesn't really feel like it's out of character of him. It doesn't feel like Oda didn't know what he was doing with this. Because nowadays, if we read the scene of a great swordman cutting a ship in half, it's like,
oh yeah, sure, of course they can do that.
But back then, it was absolutely mind-blowing. And so I love the way One Piece has managed to stay coherent despite so many years have passed. Now, after almost 30 years, that strength makes perfect sense. And it's obvious to us that the greatest swordsman in the world would cut a ship in half and defeat a fleet of 50 ships by himself. Of course he would do that, but it was very, very different back then. It just feels incredibly coherent to how One Piece has developed through the years. And what is crazy is that we really don't know anything about Mihawk. We read that scene again and we're like,
well, yeah, sure, of course, it's Mihawk.
Zoro challenges Mihawk. Zoro wanted to know how strong Mihawk was, and us readers needed to know. And when Mihawk tells him that he is just a small frog that has yet to know the ocean, he is right. That is exactly what Zoro is. But not only Zoro, all of the Straw Hats. And Zoro, when he's getting defeated, he's thinking he can't be that far. And we know that he is. And we know exactly how and why he is that far from him. I just love this moment. And it's impressive to see how, despite Zoro was absolutely no match for Mihawk, he still gained his respect. Mihawk asked his name and he challenged him. He challenged him to become the world's greatest swordsman and to defeat him. We definitely know that it's not something that Mihawk does for just anybody. And following that is Zoro's legendary moment in showing his full dedication towards Luffy, to his own dream and to Luffy's dream.
世界一の剣豪にくらいならないと俺はもう二度と負けねえから僕あるか海賊王
Zoro is very intense about his dream. It's either achieving his dream or achieving his dream. There is no plan B. Zoro knew that he was gonna get defeated. And in this moment, we see that Sanji is yelling at him.
なんでだ命なんてとうに捨ててるあの野郎イカれてるぜ相手は本物の世界一だぞ結果は見えてた死ぬくらいなら野望を捨てろよ簡単だろ野望を捨てるくらい
In this very moment, Sanji was still giving up on his dream, because Sanji was dreaming about the Old Blue, but he was giving up on going out there and trying to find it because he was serving the man who saved his life, and yells at Zoro to give up on his ambition because his life is more important. We have to understand Sanji's point of view. At this point of this story, Sanji is someone that gave up on his dream because he wanted to work for Zeph. He wanted to stay close to the man that saved his life. He was not living for his own purpose. So it was natural for him to not understand Zoro's actions. But Luffy does. Luffy definitely understands him, and we see that in the way he is holding back Johnny and Yosaku from intervening and interrupting the fight between Zoro and Mihawk. And for pirates, especially for pirates like Luffy and Zoro, there is no backing away from anything that separates you from your dream. No matter how crazy, unlikely, or nonsense it sounds, their dreams are gonna happen because they are going to make them happen. And it's either that or death, and they're both very, very vocal about this. They see no meaning in living a life where they haven't even tried achieving their dreams. And the message that they share is that what they will never accept, even more than defeat, is a life where they are not trying. And this message will come back around later in Logtown. The Baratie, of course, is the arc where Sanji is introduced. One of the first things that we see about Sanji is how much he cares about food not getting wasted, and how much angry he gets when people disrespect the food that they're given. We learn how familiar he is with the feeling of starvation, and that he lived that experience that changed him and made him into the person that he is today. That experience was horrifying enough to set a very deep core belief in him that he will never let anyone, and not even his enemies, feel that pain, the pain of being hungry, the pain of starving. And we also learn about his immense gratefulness towards Zeph. We learn that Zeph also used to dream about finding the Old Blue. He saves Sanji because he sees so much of himself in him, and he does it in a way of like, if I didn't achieve my dream, maybe you will do it. And when Sanji meets Luffy, he learns that Luffy's a dreamer just like him, and they share the same nature of feeling joyful and excited about the idea of going on an adventure to achieve your dream, even though you know nothing about the thing you're looking for, even if you don't know if it really exists or not. The purpose is the adventure and finding that out for yourself. And Zeph understands Sanji. He knows that Sanji feels this way. Zeph was not only a savior, but he was also a parent for Sanji. He saved Sanji in so many more ways than just drowning or from starvation. He saved him in so many more ways, and that the message I think here is that you can let gratitude become your prison. Zeph saved Sanji so that he could go out and follow his dream to find the Old Blue. And to save someone, it means to give them a future, a different future, a better future. And it's okay to be grateful, but you don't have to waste your life abandoning your dreams in the name of that gratitude. Zeph really was the father that Sanji deserved. Until this very moment, every time the Grand Line is mentioned, people talk about it as a very dangerous, very scary place. It even gets the name of the graveyard of pirates. Like, Krieg's fleet was completely destroyed. His pirates ran away from that place and didn't want to go back. We have people as crazily strong as Mihawk, but Zeph tells Sanji that if Sanji goes to the Grand Line, he will surely find the Old Blue, and he will surely make his dream come true. And this goes against the idea of the Grand Line being the graveyard of pirates. This actually is quite the opposite. The Grand Line here is presented as a place where your dreams can become reality. It's a place that is so absurd that anything that you dream can become true. It's the place where the impossible becomes possible. That is what the Grand Line is to pirates who believe in dreams and adventure. We finally get to Arlong Park. While we were at the Baratie, we saw that Nami ran away. She stole the Going Merry and she sailed away. Maybe the first time that we see Nami showing how deep her affection is for her friends. This is the arc where Oda really starts to develop and show his mastery in writing characters, their personalities and their backstories. Throughout the narration, he leaves small details about them scattered across different arcs and different moments, small glimpses of a character's life and personal story, like a trail of breadcrumbs that step by step you'll follow until it reveals a great hidden truth, rewarding the reader with a greater knowing of the characters that animate the world of One Piece. And everything we saw about Nami from the moment that she appeared leads us here. Her despise towards pirates, her untrusting nature, her not wanting to be involved with Luffy and Zoro, deceiving, stealing, everything leads us to this point of the story. She has her own mission. She's not used to ask for help, to share her burden with other people, and most of all, she doesn't allow herself to be vulnerable. Now, even if it's been such a long time since this arc, every time I go back to this, I can't help but think of Arlong as just terrifying. I mean, maybe because the setting is the East Blue and not the Grand Line. The East Blue is said to be the weakest or the most peaceful out of all the seas. I think it gives even a greater idea of how cruel and oppressing and evil Arlong is. Arlong hates humans and he physically dominates them with his strength. He has corrupted the Marines, he stripped the people of hope, of their lives and of their future. And here with Arlong, Oda introduces the theme of racial discrimination between fishmen and humans. The theme is fishmen dominating humans because they believe to be superior to them. We'll see many arcs later in Sabaody and Fishman Island how this sentiment that animates Arlong and his pirates is rooted in something much deeper than that.
But let's stick to Arlong part for now.
Nami set herself up to free her village, and Arlong's occupancy has such a deep toll on Nami's heart. It warped Nami's personality and choices and her beliefs about the world to the point that she believes she will only be able to smile again only once she'll be able to buy her village and save her people. The way the Straw Hats act here as a response to Nami's behavior is that they don't really believe her to be a heartless traitor that just abandoned them. Zoro in particular has a quite intense way to try to take her mask off. At that point of the story, he doesn't have that big of a bond with Nami, not yet at least, but the way he sees it is, if she's a traitor, I'm gonna die anyways, so I might as well just give her the final test to see which side she really is on. The same way Nami saved Luffy from Buggy and the Magi Ball back in Orange Town, she dives in the water and she saves Zoro in front of Arlong and the whole crew. And that's what Nami is. That's her morality. That's her sense of justice. And most of all, that is her compassion and her loyalty towards her friends. When we get to Nami's backstory is where all the pieces come together. It contextualizes her obsession over money, her actions, her untrusting nature. She's a character whose personality is a direct reflection of her past and of her experiences. We see in the flashback when Belmer finds Nojiko and Nami. Belmer was at war, she used to be a marine, she's wounded, she was hopeless, and she finds these two little girls, and when she sees Nami, Nami is smiling. Belmer is moved by that smile. She's in such a desperate situation where something as innocent and pure like a child smiling reminds her that there are beautiful things in life, things that are worth living for, things that are worth fighting for. That smile reminds her that life is not only war and blood and fighting. Life can also be something happy and joyful and worth smiling for. She will take Nojiko and Nami with her. She will adopt them and become their mother. And she will tell everyone that those two little girls saved her. Nami and Nojiko gave Belmer a different future, a peaceful future in a peaceful village, whereas before she was seeing the horrors of the world and risking her life on a daily basis. One Piece really promotes positivity towards life, because we are constantly reminded that despite the world can be full of horrors, it can also be full of beauty. And that message that Nami and Nojiko gave Belmer when they first met is the same one that Belmer will give them back around. She asks them to live, because if they do, life is gonna give them beautiful things worth living for. Nami already wasn't trusting because of her past, but during this arc, the last straw for her is the betrayal of the Marine that steals the money that she was saving up to buy her village. Because that Marine was corrupted by Arlong, she can't trust anyone. She can't trust neither pirates nor the Marines. Everyone is the same. Everyone is betraying her, and she is powerless. She fought for 8 years to her cause, to freedom, and she was betrayed, and she has to start all over again. The only person she ever met that carried justice was Luffy. When she goes back to the people of her village and tries to talk them out of fighting, their response is that it's enough. You already did too much. Let us fight now. We know that One Piece is about freedom and liberation, and I think it's very significant that the villagers pretended not to know what Nami was doing. Her people wanted her to have the freedom of choice. They were all slaves to Arlong. They were all victims, but they all felt like if at least Nami can make it out of it, she should go. That's the moment Nami crashes. That's the moment she crumbles down, and in that moment she finally allows herself to ask for help, to be vulnerable and to rely on someone. And that is hard for her because she really only knew betrayal in her life. But she knows that Luffy is the only person that she can trust because Luffy is different. And she finally learns that there is nothing wrong with sharing her burden. One Piece teaches us readers to have faith in people because trust is something that makes our lives feel so much more lighter. At first, Luffy was not fighting for Nami because she wouldn't let him fight for her. This is the ever-going theme of Luffy refusing to help someone unless they are trying to help themselves. Now with Nami it's a bit different the situation because Nami was already fighting very actively for her cause, but Luffy needed Nami to learn to trust them, to rely on them. And when Nami finally decides to rely on Luffy, Luffy shows her how pirates can be exactly the opposite of what Arlong was. Arlong is oppression, while Luffy is freedom and adventure. Arlong is dishonesty, Luffy is trust. Arlong is desperation, and Luffy is hope and dreams. Arlong is never-ending darkness, Luffy is the sun. The action Luffy does of leaving his hat to Nami speaks even louder than his words. Nami knows how much Luffy cares about that hat, and this gesture is extremely reassuring because it's a way of telling her, I will be back, you will be fine, I will be fine, everything's gonna be okay. Luffy is again using very few words and very loud actions, and the fights in this arc are probably some of the most intense that we've seen because this whole arc, it not only has a whole new way thematically speaking, it also is the arc where we start to see Oda's style in writing single battles intertwining with each other. And I have to say, here is really where Usopp stole my heart. Usopp, as we know, is written in a way that is made to resemble us reader the most. He is representing the reader inside the One Piece world, the common person trying to fight monsters. But Usopp is so much more than that. Usopp has a dream to become a brave warrior of the sea, but he is scared when put in dangerous situation. He is naturally scared of being in danger. His first instinct is to run away and hide, and every time he does it, he hates himself.
いやー負けちまったぜすまんなんだないやあの野郎今一歩で取り逃がしちまったいの方がいいかなもう一つ説得力がねえかな俺たちもう仲間だろナミ泣くなよ俺たちは当然のことをしたまでだ負ける気なら死んだ方がマシだいやー
傷つけるようなクソ一味より100倍いいだ。
いや、まさに死闘だったぜ。私のビジネスのためこうするしかなかったの。
He tries to convince himself that it's only natural to give up against such monsters, that running away was only the right choice. But as he tries to convince himself, we keep having these glimpses of how his friends would do anything for their dreams and to protect one another. They would not back down from a fight because they believe in what they're pursuing. And Usopp has the same values as them, so he knows he is lying to himself. Usopp has a very clear idea on who he wants to be. When his actions don't match that idea, it creates a break in his integrity, and he knows he is not living up to his own standards. And as hard as it is for him, he stands up, he gathers all the courage that he has, and he acts. Because being brave is not being fearless, but to do what we believe in despite all of our fears.
I love him so much.
Back to Luffy's actions being louder than his words. We see him destroying Nami's room while fighting Arlong because he understands that room is the symbol of Nami's oppression. He doesn't care about destroying her work of years because she wasn't doing it for herself. She wasn't working on her dream. She was working with the desperation of trying to save her home. That place is like a huge shadow on Nami's life, and Luffy destroys it, allowing the sun to shine back again in her heart. Luffy saved her. He gifted her a different future, the future that she chose for herself as a kid. And this is the freedom of being a pirate. And Luffy not only has the role of a liberator here, Luffy is also a protector because he protects people's dreams. He saved Nami from her oppression, but by doing that, Luffy is honoring Nami's dream of drawing the map of the world because that's the most truest part of Nami, her childhood dream. And Luffy wants to bring life to that part of her again. He doesn't want to change people, he just wants to let them be. One of the most heartbreaking scenes is when she stops her arm, and after everything is over, she gets that new tattoo and she transforms the symbol of her oppression to the symbol of her origins, her home and her family, from slavery to love. And Belmer's last message was surely true. Life really is beautiful. A beautiful change that happens immediately after peace is brought back is when the Straw Hats are leaving and Nami is just pickpocketing every single person in the village. I find Nami's greed after Arlong Park something weirdly wholesome because Nami grew up poor, and growing up and becoming a thief, she had all the richness that she always longed for, but never kept any of it for herself. It was all to buy her village back. And now that Arlong is gone and defeated, she can finally be greedy for herself. Arlong Park is such a monumental arc. Probably is the one arc that sold most of us to One Piece. I have to say though that despite Arlong Park being so important for everyone and for me as well as a reader, the small tiny arc that follows to me is the most significant in the East Blue part of the story, which is Log Town, the city of the beginning and the end.
見てみて。ワンピースを手に入れた男はこの世の全てを手に入れた男が生まれてそして死んだ町を。
When we get there, Luffy, of course, wants to immediately go and see the execution platform, the place where the king of the pirates died. Roger is a huge inspiration to Luffy. Luffy wants to see that place because he somehow feels a connection to it. He wants to see the place where the greatest pirate that ever lived lost his life, and the place where the great era of piracy has started. Zoro, meanwhile, is looking for new swords, and the whole scene is so cool where he lets the sword decide for him. I mean, Zoro has faith in himself, has faith in his dream and in his journey, and Zoro believes in his path and in his destiny. And we see often that his reckless and extreme actions have this underlying core belief: if something's meant to be, then everything will go in his favor. And the concept of destiny in the Logtown arc is very, very strong. Luffy, meanwhile, gets to the execution platform and we meet Buggy again. He wants his revenge against Luffy and tries to capture him and execute him on the execution platform where Roger lost his life. And here is where Luffy's similarities with Roger start to skyrocket. Luffy smiles like 20 years prior to the events we're seeing. Roger smiled on that same spot. And Smoker is introduced in this arc. Smoker was present the day Roger was executed. It's the one that directly makes the comparison between Roger and Luffy. And this is very important because it's the first time that someone that witnessed both Roger and Luffy is comparing them to each other. He's making that connection between the two of them. And the way Luffy gets out of that situation is just incredible. Luffy is saved by a lightning that strikes Buggy the moment Buggy is trying to execute him. Luffy laughs about it, and Sanji and Zoro saw the whole scene and are kind of shocked about it, like,
what just happened?
And Sanji asks if they believe in miracles. And there's a high chance that this was Dragon's doing. It's very likely that it was him, but the whole scene is very, very symbolic. Luffy gets saved in the most unlikely, unimaginable way. If you want to dive a bit deeper in the metaphor of this whole event, it feels like Luffy was saved by a divine intervention, because lightning striking is the most common, most known and most used symbol of divine intervention. It kind of feels like Roger is saying, you have to continue the mission that I couldn't complete. And it's very symbolic because it's the place where Roger died and it's Buggy. I think it's crazy the weight that this whole part has when you read it now. After we got those very few glimpses of Roger's journey, from here on, the rhythm of the arc is incredibly fast-paced. A storm is coming, there are pirates trying to stop them, marines trying to capture them, and it starts raining. Everyone's rushing. Zoro's past resurfaces with Tashigi facing him. There's so much going on. And then now the Straw Hats are sailing towards the Grand Line and they're ready to enter this route with the craziest dreams that they have and the will to make them come true. Logtown, I think, is such a jewel in the early One Piece part because this is the arc that makes the reader aware that there's something more in the story than just pirates going on adventures. There's something deep, an underlying plot trying to resurface, a mission, something about destiny that is masked as luck or coincidence. Something that even now, after almost 30 years, we still have to unveil. Roger almost accomplished something that someone now has to finish. Luffy is following his steps, unaware of everything, moved only by his sentiment of freedom and adventure. In Logtown, we are put in front of this quote from the Pirate King about people chasing freedom, dreams that need to survive through the passing of time, a will that is inherited. And this is the beginning of the greatest mystery of the the entire story of One Piece. This is the foundation that is yet to be revealed, where everything that we know, every character, every backstory, every island, every puzzle piece, all that's scattered around in more than 100 volumes will lead us to. This is the beginning of the greatest story ever told. All the themes that were presented in the early arcs of One Piece are not only still as relevant, but some of them are incredibly important nowadays when it comes to making the readers believe in others, have trust in the future, believing that life is worth living, that life is beautiful, that you need to trust others, that you need to rely on others, and just gives a very positive message on the beauty of life, on how life can be lighthearted and fun and joyful, and are themes that I think are very, very relevant today, as relevant as they were 30 years ago, if not even more relevant nowadays. One Piece is still ongoing and the plot is still unveiling, but the messages that the story used to give us and is still giving us today are timeless and are coherent to themselves, because One Piece has always stayed true to its core. It has only up-leveled through the passing of time. Thank you for watching.